So Meghan Markle just got completely cornered by a single email from UK Parliament that accidentally reveals way more than it hides. And honestly, the palace's refusal to answer one basic question about Archie's birth is the closest thing to an admission of guilt I've ever seen from that institution. You don't go through this much effort to hide something unless there's something genuinely catastrophic underneath. And what they're hiding isn't complicated. It's literally a yes or no question. Was Archie born at the Portland hospital? That's it. That's the question that has Buckingham Palace running scared, referring people back and forth between departments, and now threatening legal action against anyone who dares to share their non-answers publicly. Here's what happened. For years now, people have been asking very straightforward questions about Meghan Markle's pregnancy with Archie. Not demanding medical records, not asking for DNA tests, not requesting anything invasive, just asking for confirmation of things Meghan and Harry themselves have already claimed publicly. Meghan's camp has put it out there that Archie was born at the Portland Hospital in London. That's their story. So you'd think when someone writes to Parliament and says, can you please confirm that Prince Archie of Sussex was born at the Portland Hospital and tell me the names of the medical doctors who delivered him, the response would be simple. Either yes, here's the confirmation, or here's why that information is private. Instead, what happened was a bureaucratic nightmare that dragged on for years, with Parliament pointing at the palace pointing at Parliament, and nobody willing to say the words, yes, Archie was born at the Portland Hospital. The email that came back most recently is what really blows this whole thing open. Parliament's official response states that the royal household is not a public authority within the meaning of the Freedom of Information Acts and is therefore exempt from their provisions. Read that again slowly. They're saying the royal family doesn't have to follow transparency laws that apply to actual public authorities. But here's where it gets truly unhinged. This same email now contains a confidentiality notice at the bottom threatening legal action if the email is shared publicly. Previous communications didn't have that warning. Something changed. Someone got nervous. Someone realized that their non-answer answers were themselves becoming evidence of a cover-up, and now they're trying to make sure nobody can show the public exactly how suspicious their responses have become. You know what really gets me about this? The palace has absolutely nothing to lose by confirming Archie was born at the Portland Hospital, if that's actually what happened. Think about it. If Meghan Markle genuinely gave birth to Archie at that hospital with real doctors present, with all the standard documentation that any birth generates, then confirming it publicly costs them nothing. It ends the rumors overnight. It protects Archie's position in the line of succession. It protects Harry's children from a lifetime of speculation. So why won't they do it? Why is confirming a birth location, something Meghan herself has allegedly stated publicly, treated like a state secret worthy of legal threats and interdepartmental finger-pointing? The only logical answer is that they can't confirm it because it didn't happen. Or it didn't happen the way they said it did. Or there's something in those records that contradicts the public narrative so severely that they've decided stonewalling is safer than honesty. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just reading the situation for what it is. Institutions don't hide things that make them look good. They hide things that would destroy them. Let's talk about the timeline problems with Archie's birth, because this is where Meghan Markle's story completely falls apart, even without the palace's suspicious behavior. Harry himself has given interviews describing the birth. He said Meghan had a complicated delivery. She was overdue. She was a geriatric pregnancy. That's the medical term for any pregnancy where the mother is over 35, and Meghan was 37 when she had Archie. She received an epidural, and according to Harry, she actually had to be tapped twice because the first epidural didn't take properly. Now, anyone who's given birth or been around someone who has knows that an epidural is not a casual thing. It's a procedure that numbs you from the waist down. You cannot walk after an epidural. You cannot just get up and leave. Medical protocol in the United Kingdom requires that any woman who receives an epidural remain in the hospital for observation for a minimum of 6 to 7 hours afterward, often longer. They need to confirm the medication hasn't caused complications, that sensation has returned properly, that there's no spinal headache developing, that the mother can urinate on her own. These aren't optional suggestions. They're standard safety protocols that exist specifically because things can go wrong. But Harry claims that Meghan Markle left the hospital within an hour of giving birth. He said they were back at Frogmore Cottage within 2 hours total. A geriatric mother with a complicated birth, overdue, who received an epidural twice, discharged and home within 2 hours. That's not how medicine works. That's not how hospitals work. That's not how anything works. Compare this with Catherine, Princess of Wales. When she gave birth to Prince George, Catherine was 31 years old. 6 years younger than Meghan, nowhere near geriatric pregnancy territory. She was in excellent physical shape. The birth was uncomplicated. She did not receive an epidural, and yet Catherine stayed in the hospital overnight. Standard procedure, normal observation. Nobody rushed her out the door. Nobody pretended she was fine to leave immediately. The hospital followed protocol, because that's what hospitals do when a future king is born, and the mother's safety matters. So either Meghan Markle received special treatment that no other woman in the United Kingdom would receive, being discharged dangerously early against all medical guidelines, or the story about her giving birth at the Portland hospital isn't true. Those are the only two options. And if she did receive special treatment that put her health at risk, why would the palace allow that? Why would any doctor sign off on that? Why would Harry, who claims to be so protective of his wife, allow her to be rushed out of the hospital hours before it was safe? None of it makes sense unless the hospital story itself is fabricated. And then there's the doctor question. When royal babies are born, it's standard practice to announce the medical team. It's part of the official record. When Catherine gave birth to each of her children, the names of the doctors were made public. It's tradition, it's protocol, and it serves a purpose. It establishes witnesses to the birth, medical professionals who can verify that the child was indeed born to the royal mother. This matters specifically because of the line of succession. You cannot have ambiguity about whether a child positioned 6th or 7th in line to the throne actually came out of the body of the person claiming to be their mother. The entire constitutional framework depends on clear, verifiable lineage, but Meghan Markle and Harry have refused to name a single doctor who delivered Archie. Not one name. The palace won't confirm it. Parliament won't confirm it. Everyone's been instructed to redirect inquiries in an endless loop, and now they're adding legal threats to anyone who shares their evasive responses. For a child who is 6th in line to the British throne, we have 0 medical witnesses whose names we can verify. Think about what that means for the integrity of the succession. The moon bomb situation is something we have to address because it's not just internet speculation. There's visual evidence that's genuinely disturbing when you look at it carefully. Meghan Markle's pregnant belly appeared to change size and shape dramatically from event to event, sometimes within the same day. There are photographs where her belly looks high and round in the morning and significantly lower or differently shaped by evening. There are videos where the belly appears to shift position when she moves in ways that actual pregnant bellies don't shift. Real pregnant stomachs don't wobble independently from the body. Real pregnant stomachs don't collapse when you bend over. Real pregnant stomachs don't look completely different from one angle versus another in ways that suggest padding rather than flesh. What's particularly damning is that Meghan Markle seemed to enjoy flaunting these obvious fakes. She wore tight dresses that emphasized the belly in ways that made the inconsistencies more visible, not less. She touched and cradled her stomach constantly in a way that actual pregnant women, especially women who've been pregnant before or who are dealing with a difficult geriatric pregnancy, don't typically do in public settings. It was performative in a way that felt designed to draw attention to the pregnancy while simultaneously mocking anyone who might question it. Like she knew the palace would back her up no matter what, so she could be as blatant as she wanted. And the palace did back her up. That's the crucial part of this. Meghan Markle couldn't have pulled off a fake pregnancy narrative without institutional cooperation. Someone in the palace had to agree to announce the pregnancy officially. Someone had to agree to announce the birth officially. Someone had to sign off on Archie being added to the line of succession. The palace became complicit in whatever deception was occurring, whether willingly or through negligence. And now they're trapped if they admit the pregnancy was fake. They admit the institution was either fooled or participated in fraud. If they keep hiding, they look guilty, and the speculation never ends. The Trevor Engelson situation adds another layer that makes all of this even more suspicious. Trevor is Meghan's first husband, and there have been reports that he put out information suggesting Meghan had a hysterectomy and couldn't have children. If that's true, and it's a significant if, but one that hasn't been definitively disproven, then Archie and Lilibet couldn't have come from Meghan's body. That would mean either surrogacy was used, which the palace has never acknowledged, or something even more complicated was going on. Either way, it would explain why the palace refuses to confirm basic details. Confirming the birth location and doctors would open the door to questions about whether Meghan was actually the birth mother, and that's a door they clearly cannot afford to open. What's strange is how much easier it would have been to just be honest from the beginning. If Meghan Markle used a surrogate, that's not scandalous. Many women use surrogates for many reasons. It would have been a private matter handled privately, and the public would have moved on. Instead, they chose to construct this elaborate public pregnancy narrative with bump appearances and hospital stories and birth timelines that don't add up. And now they're stuck defending the indefensible, because admitting the lie would be more damaging than maintaining it. The palace's behavior in all of this reveals an institution that has learned nothing from its recent scandals. Prince Andrew's situation showed that hiding information and refusing to cooperate with legitimate inquiries only makes everything worse. The damage always comes from the cover-up, not the original problem. And yet here they are again. Same playbook, same disastrous strategy. They're threatening legal action against people who ask reasonable questions. They're hiding behind technical definitions of what constitutes a public authority. They're sealing documents that should be routine public record. Every choice they make screams that they have something to hide. King Charles could end this today. He could release a statement confirming Archie was born at the Portland hospital, naming the attending physicians, and providing whatever standard documentation exists. If everything happened the way Meghan and Harry said it did, that statement costs him nothing and protects his grandchildren from a lifetime of questions. The fact that he hasn't done that nobody in the palace has done that, tells you everything you need to know. Either the documentation doesn't exist, or it contradicts the public story, or someone has made the calculation that ongoing suspicion is preferable to whatever truth would come out. The late Queen Elizabeth can't be blamed for this one. She's been gone for years now, and these decisions are being made by the current palace leadership under Charles. This is his mess to clean up, and he's choosing not to clean it up. He's choosing to let his grandchildren's legitimacy remain a topic of public debate rather than provide basic confirmation of their births. What kind of grandfather does that? What kind of king allows the 6th and 7th in line to the throne to exist under a permanent cloud of doubt when one sentence from him could clear everything up? The confidentiality thread in the latest email is particularly revealing. Previous correspondence didn't include that language. Someone in the palace or parliament legal team recently decided that these evasive responses need to be kept secret. They're worried about the public seeing how they handle legitimate inquiries. They know their own behavior, they're trying to hide evidence of it. That's not how innocent institutions act. That's how institutions with something to hide act. Meghan Markle must be loving this. Every time the palace refuses to answer a question, every time they threaten someone for sharing their non-answers, they make her look more credible and themselves look more corrupt. She's out there doing whatever she wants, knowing the palace has boxed itself into a corner where defending her lies is now necessary for their own survival. They can't expose her without exposing their own complicity. She's got them exactly where she wants them. The real victims here are Archie and Lilibet. These are real children who exist in the world regardless of how they came into it, and they're growing up with their parentage being a subject of international speculation. That's not fair to them. They didn't choose any of this. And the people who could protect them from this, their parents, their grandfather, the institution that put them in the line of succession, are choosing instead to let the questions fester. If Archie is genuinely Meghan and Harry's biological child, born at the Portland hospital as claimed, then his parents and the palace are subjecting him to unnecessary scrutiny by refusing to provide the documentation. That would end the conversation. If he's not, then they've placed a child with unclear lineage in the line of succession to the British throne, which is a constitutional crisis waiting to happen. The Freedom of Information Act exemption is a technical argument that might work in court but fails completely in the court of public opinion. Yes, the royal household might technically not be a public authority under the specific wording of that act, but the monarchy exists at the pleasure of the public. Their funding comes from the public. Their legitimacy depends on public trust. Hiding behind legal technicalities while the public asks reasonable questions about children in the line of succession is a great way to convince people that the monarchy doesn't believe it answers to anyone. And in a modern democracy, that's a dangerous position for any hereditary institution to take. What happens when Archie grows up and wants to see his own birth records? What happens when a journalist files a different kind of request under different legislation? What happens when a medical professional who was actually present decides to come forward? The palace is betting that they can control this narrative forever, but they can't. Information always comes out eventually. And the longer they wait, the worse it will be when it does. The 2-hour discharge story alone should have been enough to trigger an investigation. If Harry's account is accurate, then a hospital discharged a geriatric mother who'd had a complicated birth with double epidural administration within an hour of delivery. That's medical malpractice. That's the kind of thing that gets hospitals sued and doctors stripped of their licenses. So either Harry was lying about the timeline, or Harry was lying about the epidural and the complications, or Harry was lying about the hospital birth entirely. There's no version where all of those details can simultaneously be true. And the palace's refusal to clarify which parts are true and which aren't means they're comfortable with the public knowing that at least some of the official story is fabricated. They'd rather have us wondering which lies they told than confirm any truth at all. Meghan Markle's entire public persona depends on the palace continuing to play this game. She's built a narrative of victimhood and persecution that requires an enemy to fight against. The palace's evasiveness gives her exactly what she needs. It makes her look like someone the establishment is trying to silence rather than someone whose story doesn't hold up to basic scrutiny. Every threatening letter, every refused confirmation, every legal warning just feeds into her narrative. She's winning because the palace is playing her game by her rules. And her supporters will point to the lack of official confirmation as proof that the questions themselves are illegitimate. The palace hasn't said anything. So obviously, there's nothing to say. That's the argument. But the palace has said something. They said they won't answer. They've said the royal household is exempt from transparency. They said they'll threaten legal action against people who share their responses. That's not silence. That's active concealment dressed up as bureaucratic procedure. The contrast with Catherine's births couldn't be starker. Doctors named. Hospital confirmed. Timeline clear and consistent with medical protocol. No mystery, no evasion, no legal threats. One set of royal births handled with complete transparency, one set shrouded in secrecy. The difference isn't in the mothers, it's in the stories being told. One story is true and can withstand scrutiny. The other story falls apart the moment anyone asks a follow-up question. So where does this leave us? The palace is hiding behind legal definitions. Parliament is washing its hands of responsibility. Meghan Markle is continuing to do whatever she wants with the confidence of someone who knows her secrets are safe. And 2 children remain in the line of succession with birth circumstances that nobody in authority will verify. This isn't sustainable. This isn't how a constitutional monarchy functions in the 21st century. Something has to give eventually. The email's confidentiality clause is the detail that should worry everyone most. They're not just refusing to answer questions anymore. They're trying to make it impossible for the public to even know what questions are being asked and how they're being answered. They're building a wall of legal threats around the entire topic. That's not the behavior of an institution with nothing to hide. That's the behavior of an institution in full panic mode, trying to contain information that would cause genuine damage if it got out. And for what? A birth location and some doctor names. Information that for any other royal birth in modern history has been freely available. The fact that this specific information for this specific birth is being guarded this aggressively tells you that it's not routine. Something is different about Archie's birth, and whatever that something is, the palace has decided that threatening legal action against curious citizens is preferable to letting it come out. Meghan Markle and Harry could solve this tomorrow. They could release the documentation themselves. They could name the doctors. They could sign waivers allowing the hospital to confirm the birth. They have the power to end every conspiracy theory instantly. They choose not to. Every day they choose not to. And every day, that choice makes the theories more credible, not less. The palace is protecting Meghan Markle at the expense of its own credibility. They're sacrificing public trust to maintain a fiction that benefits nobody except Meghan herself. And they're doing it with their eyes open, adding legal threats to their toolkit, digging the hole deeper with every evasive email and every refused confirmation. The question isn't whether this will eventually blow up. The question is, how much damage will have been done to the monarchy's reputation by the time it does?